Hey everyone, I'm Joshua Orro of the Mustang Prince, and welcome to Mustang Prince Orro Reports. Now last time, I blogged Hayao Miyazaki's Nausicaa of the Valley of the Wind, which is still a classical Japanese movie which was adapted from a manga that Miyazaki has written himself. However, speaking of adaptations, we all know that Miyazaki did his own take of The Little Mermaid with Ponyo, but during the mid-2000s, Miyazaki adapted a British fantasy story which involves war, magic, along with destiny, youth, courage, and love. Released in Japan on November 20th, 2004, and in North America on June 17th, 2005, the movie is Howl's Moving Castle. Now, let's get started. Young Sophie Hatter is cursed by the jealous Witch of the Waste and turns into an old woman. Ashamed of how she looks, Sophie flees into the hills where a moving castle is roaming. It turns out that the castle belongs to the young and handsome wizard Howl, who seems to have a bad reputation. Within the castle, Sophie befriends the fire demon Calcifer, who promises to help her become young again on the condition that she must help Calcifer be free of Howl. During her stay in Howl's castle, Howl falls in love with Sophie for who she is and not for what she looks like. Also, Sophie manages to bring life to the moving castle, and she helps Howl to face his former tutor, Madame Solomon. So, what do I personally think of this movie? Well, I deeply regret not seeing this movie in theaters, but I gotta admit, this is a really enchanting movie, and I absolutely love it. But, to further explain why I love this film, let's move on to Mustang notes. The film is loosely based on the 1986 novel Howl's Moving Castle by British author Diana Wynne-Jones. The movie was influenced by Miyazaki's opposition to the U.S.'s invasion of Iraq in 2003. Like Nausicaa, the film contains strong anti-war themes. Miyazaki stated that he had a great deal of rage about the Iraq War, which led him to make a film which he felt would be poorly received in the U.S. It also explores the theme of old age, depicting age positively and something which grants the protagonist freedom. The film also contains feminist elements and carries messages about the value of compassion. In 2013, Miyazaki has stated that Howl's Moving Castle was his favorite creation. He explained that he wanted to convey the message that life is worth living for. Also, while the original book focuses on challenging class and gender norms, the film focuses more on love and personal loyalty and the destructive effects of war. During production, Miyazaki went to France to study the architecture and the surroundings for the film's setting. Additional inspiration came from the concepts of future technology in Albert Robita's work. Commentators have stated that Miyazaki's imagery was influenced by his fondness for the illusion art of the 19th century Europe. Suzuki stated that unlike any Western film, in which the imagery went from general to the specific, Miyazaki explored a very uniquely Japanese approach, frequently beginning with a very specific image, and moving on from there. However, Howl's Moving Castle and Miyazaki films in general have a focus on realistic imagery in a way that other anime films don't. Now, in my opinion, The Japanese animation is absolutely flawless, and I really love the additional digital touches to it. Plus, since this movie is based on a British fantasy, I think the villages and towns in this movie look very European, and I think some of the vehicles in this movie kind of remind me of a few that I saw at a museum in London 10 years ago. Plus, the landscapes are really breathtaking, and I think Howell's castle is designed very cleverly. Even though the legs look a little strange. Also, the inside looks very homey after Sophie cleans up the place. But the thing that stands out the most inside that castle is the dial on the side of the door, which takes the castle to different places. Also, in my eyes, the destruction caused by the flying battleships is pretty intense. And I think the story is not only magical, but it's also mysterious and thought-provoking. And now, let's move on to the characters and the voice actors who brought him to life. And, just to remind you guys, we're only going to look at the English cast. Our main character, Sophie Hatter, is voiced by Emily Mortimer. But as an old lady, she's voiced by the late Gene Simmons. In my eyes, Sophie is a very mature young lady. Plus, she's gentle, quiet, and humble. Plus, I think Sophie is a great cook and a great cleaning lady. Also, I really felt bad when Sophie got turned into an old lady, but thankfully, she de-ages a few times throughout the film, depending on her emotional state, due to her love for Howell. The title character, Howl, is voiced by Christian Bale, who got to be in Christopher Nolan's Batman trilogy, Disney's Pocahontas, and of course, the Netflix movie, Mowgli, Legend of the Jungle Book. Now, in my eyes, Howl is a real badass character, despite the fact that he has a tendency to be stubborn and dishonest, and he commonly avoids getting involved in uncomfortable situations or those that require his participation. But despite that, I think Christian Bale's voice for Howl is pretty similar to George Newbern as Sephiroth. Plus, I just love the scene when Howl shows Sophie his secret garden. And I also like when he protects Sophie from some wandering soldiers. Plus, I think his childhood backstory was absolutely very shocking. Next we have Calcifer, voiced by the hilarious Billy Crystal. Best known from the Monsters, Inc. movies, and he was also a radio in Search of Dr. Seuss. Calcifer is a fire demon with a great deal of magical abilities, though he cannot move beyond the confines of the hearth, in which Howl keeps him without the wizard's help. Now, as I said earlier, Calcifer makes a bargain with Sophie that he would try and break her curse if she would break his. But he could only give her a few hints, though. Now, in my opinion, like most characters that Billy Crystal breathes life into, Calcifer has some of the funniest lines ever. Plus, Calcifer is really incredible when moving Howl's castle around and operating Howl's water system. Next is Howl's apprentice, Markle, voiced by a young Josh Hutcherson, who got to be in Kickin' and Screamin', the Journey to the Center of the Earth movies, Bridge to Terabithia, and Blue Sky's Epic. Now, this kid is said to be an orphan from Port Haven. Howell found Markle when he was sleeping in front of his castle's doorstep. To me, I think Markle is very helpful and obedient to Howl when running his shop, and he's also very supportive to Sophie while cleaning the castle. Next we come to the Witch of the Waste, voiced by Lauren Bacall, whom I talked about in my blog of Madeline Lost in Paris. To me, the Witch of the Waste is a powerful character, but at the same time, she's very spiteful due to Howell's interest in Sophie. Also, her curse on Sophie is kind of similar to what the evil Fang will be doing to Princess Mei Li in the 10th Swan Princess movie next month. Plus, I don't know about you guys, but I wonder if her henchmen were the inspiration for the blot links in the Epic Mickey games. Also, I think it was really stupid for the witch to grab Calcifer in order to take Howell's heart for herself. Next is the true antagonist of the movie, Madame Solomon, voiced by Blythe Danner. Solomon is the king's royal sorceress and Howell's former teacher. Throughout this movie, she's been recruiting wizards and witches for the king to fight in the war due to the prince of the neighboring kingdom going missing. However, when Sophie meets Solomon, it's revealed that she's been inviting wizards and witches just so that she could drain their magic and turn them into dark monsters. Plus, later on, Solomon tricked and manipulated Sophie's mother in order to track down Howl. Another character to talk about is a scarecrow named Turnip Head, whose real identity is Prince Justin, voiced by Crispin Freeman. I find this character to be another good supporting character, due to him taking a liking to Sophie after she helped him out of a bush. But at the end of the movie, after Sophie kisses him, he's turned back into Prince Justin and vows to go back to his kingdom and stop the war. And now, let's move on to my final words. Overall, Howl's Moving Castle is really amazing. While I do regret not seeing it in theaters, the story is very magical and thrilling, the Japanese animation is spectacular, and I think the English voice cast do an amazing job, thanks to the help of the current Pixar CEO, Pete Docter. And after watching this movie again, I think I should definitely read the original book at my local bookstore after the coronavirus dies. As for my final rating, well, I'll give this movie a full 100%. Well, that's all for now. Be sure to join me for another Miyazaki blog, where I talk about a young witch who becomes a delivery girl. Mustang Power!